for joining us this early evening. And thanks to Annemarie just coming just to do the presentation, taking her precious night with us. I will introduce Annemarie just briefly. She has a lot to offer. She has a lot to give. I will make it short. Annemarie is a holistic nutritionist. She believes that everyone deserves to feel their best every day. That is why she graduated with honors from Western University's medical science program. Annemarie went on to complete further certification through the Institute of Holistic Nutrition, as well as yoga teacher training, focusing on restorative yoga and meditation. I didn't know. I have another session in winter or in the spring. So that is good to know. Her studies have culminated in a unique approach to health and wellness, with mental health and stress-related disease at the center of her practice. So we can just bring her 5-6 times more. Annemarie went on to Annemarie also, I think it's just very important testimony is Annemarie as a holistic nutritionist guides her clients to find their innate ability to heal. She works with her clients to distill their unique motivations for incorporating dietary and lifestyle modifications, creating personalized programs that will work for them now and in the future. Providing a safe and supportive space, Annemarie would be honored to guide all of us. Today, all of us are her clients, to guide us along the journey towards our best self. Thank you, Annemarie.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that introduction, Gabriel. I so appreciate everybody who's come on tonight, spending, an hour and a half of their evening diving into this important topic of gut health. As Linda mentioned, holding the questions till the end, or as they're coming up, you can just drop them in the chat box. And when we come to the end, I'll open that chat box up and I'll go through anything that's come up there. So let's get into it. So tonight we're talking about unlocking gut health. And Gabriel did a great introduction there, so I don't need to go too much into my background or my introduction here. But I think that an important piece of this is to mention that kind of the driving force behind, going from the degree in medical science towards the holistic nutrition, towards the yoga teaching certification and mindfulness, was really my own gut health journey. So I've struggled in the past with, intense bloating and cramping and fatigue and all of these things that had a large implication in my life. And tying into that, also having experience with mental health, depression and anxiety, and really seeing how those two stories connected to really address my whole health. So that's really the underlying string of what's kind of brought me to this point. And I'm so excited to dive into this with you tonight and get some good information into you. So a little roadmap here, what we're going to be covering. So we're going to talk about, first of all, what is gut health and why does it matter? We're going to talk about the connection between stress and gut health. We're going to pull in, okay, what are the common issues that I'm seeing every day with the clients coming through my office? And we're going to talk about then how to achieve and maintain gut health. So just to preface, you're in the right place if you have experienced any of the conditions that are laid out here. So from chronic pain to mood issues to autoimmune disorders to brain fog and fatigue. Even if the specific condition that you're sitting with right now isn't listed here, all of our chronic diseases nowadays are rooted in inflammation, and that's a big part of this gut story as well. So you're in the right place, and just again to kind of tie together all of these very seemingly different conditions are all kind of beginning in the gut and can be tied back to gut health. So let's dive into it. So what do we mean by gut health? So when we're talking about the gut, we're essentially talking about the gastrointestinal tract, which is shown here on this little diagram. So if we have good gut health, we would have a great ability to break down and absorb the nutrients that we're taking into our body. So really starting with that ability to break down and absorb nutrients. If we have good gut health, we have a great ability to defend against incoming pathogens, and we have really great immunity. 70% of our immune system is lining our intestinal linings for good reason, right? This GI tract is our main exposure to the outside world. So if something is coming into your body, it's likely it's going to be coming through your mouth, going through your digestive tract. So to have the immune system lining the gut, it's a perfect place to make sure that it's coming into contact with any of those outside pathogens. And if we have good gut health, we have good integrity of our intestinal lining. So we'll dive into that in some more detail. And we have a good balance of our gut microbiome. So I think a lot of the times when we talk about gut health, the first thing we might think is, I don't really know what that is, but I've heard a lot about it. The second thing you might think is, oh yeah, I've heard a lot about the gut microbiome. But really the gut microbiome is just one piece of the puzzle. So we're gonna kind of walk through digestion and look at different places where it's affected and where those common ailments come up and how we can address them. So first off, we're gonna kick it off by diving into stress and digestion, because this is the main driver that I see in a lot of clients behind digestive issues is stress. And we're going to dive into why that is. So this is an overly complicated chart showing the difference kind of here between our fight or flight and our rest and digest. So you've probably heard of the fight or flight response, right? The typical example would be you're walking in a forest and you come face to face with a tiger. And your body instantaneously, without your conscious knowing, shifts your nervous system and makes all of these changes so that you're able to either fight that tiger or run away. So it does things like dilates your pupils, increases your heart rate. And what's really important for our conversation tonight is that it shunts your blood away from your internal organs and into your limbs. Because if you're going to fight this tiger, or if you're going to run away from it, you're going to need to have that extra blood flow there. So what that means is that things that are non-essential in that moment where you're running into a tiger are shut down. Things like digestion, things like immunity and cellular repair, all of these things that the body goes, hey, I don't need to deal with that right now because if I get eaten by this tiger, none of it matters. So the opposite nervous system response in our body is this rest and digest. And this is where we want to just exist on the day-to-day. This is where digestion is flowing. This is where immunity is doing what it needs to do. Cellular repair is taking place. But what happens in our society, right? If you're face to face with a tiger, you have this instantaneous reaction, you run away, you're able to look around then and go, oh, okay, I'm safe. Tiger's gone. All right, safe body to move back into that rest and digest. But our stressors today aren't things we can necessarily run away from. So things like, money stress or, stress at your job or you name it. We have so many stressors that we come up against in this current society that we live in. So a lot of us operate kind of more just in this fight or flight state. And it takes a little bit more for us to nudge ourselves into that rest and digest. So what happens then if you eat while you're stressed and your body is inhibiting digestion? You're not able to secrete stomach acid. So we know stomach acid is one of the first things that breaks down your food. You have a reduced secretion of digestive enzymes, which are these little tiny microscopic guys who then continue that digestive breakdown process. And when you have these then undigested food particles moving through your system, contributes to the inflammation of the gut, can lead to food intolerances, which we'll dive into a little bit more in a minute. And all of a sudden you're unable to actually break down and absorb those foods. So, you know, you could be eating the absolute best diet in the world. You could be doing all the right things nutritionally, but if you're constantly eating when you're stressed, you're not able to break down those great foods. You're not able to absorb those awesome nutrients. And that's where you can start to run into things like nutritional deficiencies, which down the line can lead to mood disorders, all sorts of things. Energy, fatigue, all of that tied into these nutritional deficiencies. The other piece is that these undigested food particles, if you're not absorbing it, it's going to keep moving through your system. It's going to end up in your colon where your gut bacteria are. And if you don't eat it, they will. And when they feed on these things that aren't supposed to end up in the colon, you get things like gas and bloating. And also, it tends to be the bad bacteria in your gut that love to feed on these foods that are coming through. So as those guys eat up and they grow and they proliferate, they start secreting toxic substances. All of a sudden you have an increased toxic load. Your liver has to do a lot of work. You get brain fog, all sorts of things. So all of this to say, if you're eating when you're stressed, you're not absorbing the foods that you're taking in. So what can we do to support ourselves specifically at mealtime? So it's not realistic to say that, you know, you're going to live your entire life in this rest and digest state, and nor should you. There's a benefit to being in that stress state as well. But when it comes to mealtime, there's some things we can do to shift ourselves into that rest and digest. So one of the quickest, easiest things you can do, sit down, take 3 deep breaths before you eat. Breath is one of the things that we can control that signals to our body, to our nervous system that, hey, I'm safe, it's okay. Because if you're face to face with that tiger, you're gonna have that quick, shallow breath. But if you're able to do a nice deep inhale and exhale, you're telling your body from the outside in, hey, it's okay. Let's move into that rest and digest state. So that's the first thing you can do. Sit down, take 3 deep breaths. The next thing that really triggers your digestive system into kicking that stomach acid into gear, into secreting those digestive enzymes. Oh, it just sounds like somebody's mic maybe got turned on there.
So,
if everyone can just double check that your mic is on mute. Linda, you might actually be able to mute as well as the administrator. Oh, looks like we're good. So then the second thing is that, yeah, to really get that digestion going is to eat without distraction. So, you know, we're so used to sitting down at the TV, or, you know, if you're at work, you know, you're having your lunch break while you're typing away on your computer, finishing up emails, and you're just kind of eating like this. So really, truly sit down with your food, see your food, smell your food. These are the first things that trigger the body. Okay, I'm about to eat. Let's get things ready to take that food in and digest. And then chewing your food, you can picture these tiny little microscopic digestive enzymes that are these guys who are coming along and literally chopping molecular bonds in your food to break it into its constituent pieces. So helping them out as best you can, really chewing that food. They say 40 chews per bite of food, which I've tried and it seems like a lot. So, you know, just being mindful, really chewing until your food is at a good consistency to swallow, and helping them out that way. And then, you know, life happens, right? So there's not always going to be these times, especially if you're at a stressful job, where you're able to create that shift into more of the rest and digest. So there's a couple of ways we can support the body. One would be taking a digestive enzyme supplement. The one I use with clients has hydrochloric acid as well, which is your stomach acid. So that just helps when you're not able to get into that relaxed state, and you're not able to support the digestive system in that way. It just kickstarts your stomach acid, kickstarts those digestive enzymes, and at least gets things broken down better. Digestive bitters is another really great way to support your digestion. And this one is something that I really love and I find really interesting. It's that, you know, as humans, we've evolved for hundreds of, well, millions of years alongside nature, right? And as plants evolved alongside us, they developed this ability to tell us, hey, I might be poisonous, don't eat me. And that was to create this bitter taste. So in humans, we have, I think it's, you know, 27 to 35 bitter versus, you know, 4 to 5 taste buds for the other flavors. And what those taste buds do is when they taste bitter, it signals to the entire rest of your digestive tract that, hey, what you're eating might be poison. So it, you know, kicks your stomach acid into gear. It secretes your good digestive enzymes. It puts your liver on warning and says, hey, let's get metabolizing things here because, you know, there might be a toxic substance coming your way that you really need to deal with. So it's kind of a really cool hack that you can use. So digestive bitters usually come as a dropper. You just drop it on your tongue. You want to taste it. You want to get that bitter flavor. And you would use that before meals to get your digestive system going. So that's my bit on stress and digestion. We'll come back to that a little bit at the end as well, when we kind of talk about some overall things we can incorporate to help digestive health and gut health. But let's move right along into common issues with the gut. So the things that I'm seeing all the time with clients are leaky gut, which is looking at the integrity of the intestinal lining. So leaky gut is primarily a small intestine issue. That's where the majority of our nutrient absorption happens. And dysbiosis, so that would be an issue of the colon, where we have our colonization of gut bacteria. And dysbiosis is looking at that balance of the gut microbiome. So let's get into both of those. So leaky gut, what does this mean? So under normal circumstances, in a nice healed, great integrity gut, the cells that line the gut lining there are held super tightly together. And they're actually linked together with something called tight junctions. So in a normal circumstance, you would eat something, your digestive enzymes would break it down into its tiny constituent parts. Those food molecules would then pass through the cells that line the gut and into the bloodstream, which is here. But what happens is, you know, just due to our society, just to the foods that we eat, due to our toxic exposure just from living our lives, is that we tend to have inflammation in the gut. So what happens when you have inflammation in the gut is that those cells that are normally held super close together start to loosen, and you start to lose some of the integrity of these gap junctions. So that's represented here. And now all of a sudden, instead of just those tiny constituent molecules passing through the cell and into the bloodstream, we have undigested food particles passing directly into the bloodstream where they're not supposed to be. And you'll remember that we said, you know, 70% of the immune system is lining the intestinal tract. And so as soon as that undigested food particle passes into the bloodstream where it's not supposed to be, the immune system goes, oh my gosh, what the heck is this? We're being invaded, launch an attack. So your immune system launches a full-on attack. And what happens is, you know, you get increased inflammation as part of that immune system response. You get a hypervigilant immune system. So now your immune system is on the lookout systemically. It's going, okay, all of a sudden we're being attacked by any number of things right now. We need to be hypervigilant, be on guard, and be ready for anything. So the downstream effects of leaky gut would be things like multiple food sensitivities. So after eating, you know, no matter what you're eating, you're getting this cramping and bloating type feeling. And that would be because, you know, all sorts of different undigested food molecules are passing through into the bloodstream. So your immune system is responding to all of these different unknown threats. So every time it sees those things, it's causing this huge reaction. Headaches and migraines is one that comes from these type of leaky gut reactions. Allergies, so another place where your immune system is now hypervigilant. It's attacking environmental things that are coming in that aren't a real threat, but it's on guard, so it needs to be prepared and attack. And autoimmune disorders. So autoimmune disorders stem from an overactive immune system. It's that your immune system is starting to see yourself and things that it should recognize as self, but it's starting to go, oh, I don't know, this joint might be a foreign invader, because we're just so on edge, we're so hypervigilant. So inflammation begins in the gut, and through this leaky gut type mechanism, it becomes systemic, because the more that immune system is reacting in the body, the more it's creating inflammation. And this is something that I would say, 99% of us, just from existing in our society, would have leaky gut to a degree. And that might look like, some food sensitivities, or it might look like I said about, reacting to many, many things. So the gut microbiome. This one is a really interesting topic. You've probably heard about it in the news, and it's something that we've really only began researching in about the last 10 years. I know a colleague of mine a decade ago was starting to make this connection between, gut microbes and mental health and how that might be affecting things. And he was laughed out of symposiums with medical doctors because they just said that's absolutely ridiculous. And so over the last decade, there's been so much research into this, and we now know the huge implications that these microbes have on our health and on our wellness, and including some research that just came out over the last couple of weeks that I've added in here that's really quite interesting, and I'm excited to share it with you. So our gut microbiome is all of these good bacteria, these bad bacteria, these yeast, all of these different guys that take up residence in our colon, in our gut. And in exchange for us giving them a nice warm home and sending them food constantly, they do a few really nice things for us. One of those things is that they manufacture B vitamins. So you've probably heard about the importance of B vitamins, especially B12, and that ties into energy and mood. Another thing that they manufacture for us is neurotransmitters. So in this way, the gut is really communicating to the brain what's going on in the external environment, right? The brain can't see what's going on. It's all of these things that are passing through the GI tract that's giving information to the gut microbiome, and then they're passing these neurotransmitters to the brain. One of those neurotransmitters is serotonin, which you might recognize as our happiness hormone. So every time I read a research paper, it's like a higher and higher percentage, but the latest thing that I have read is that 95% of our serotonin is manufactured in the gut by our good gut microbiome. So in that way right there, you can just see the importance when it comes to mental health, when it comes to mood and being able to regulate emotions that that good gut microbiome has. These good guys also secrete immune system modulators. So like we said, it's this communication that's coming from the external world. The gut microbiome is seeing these different things that are coming through, and it's communicating back to the brain. Hey, okay, here's what's going on. We've got some pathogenic bacteria, we've got some toxins coming through, and then the brain is able to create this downstream effect with the immune system, bolster things up if needed, but it's that communication that's going on. And this is the really interesting piece. This is the research that's just coming out very, very recently. And it's that some of these metabolites, some of these things that these good bacteria are secreting are neuroprotective and anti-inflammatory. So this comes into play when it comes to amyloid plaques in the brain. So the research that's coming out now is showing that some of these metabolites that our good microbiome are secreting have an impact on our mental health and on protecting the integrity of our brain health. And that it's the bad bacteria that are secreting things that are adding to these amyloid plaques, which are the first step of things like Alzheimer's disease and dementia. So that right there, again, is a huge implication in your health and wellness, and how important it is to take good care of these little guys. And just emphasizing there the last point about this two-way communication between the gut microbiome and the brain. So there's a constant communication going on. And what's really interesting too is that the majority of the communication is actually from the gut to the brain. So most of the information flow is the gut telling the brain what's going on. So then what can happen is, as we mentioned, there's always a balance of the good guys and the bad guys. And essentially you can picture the colon, and there's only so much real estate to set up shop on. So most of the time we have the good guys taking up most of the real estate, a couple of bad guys in there, but essentially the good guys edge them out. But what can happen through any number of things, courses of antibiotics, stressful events even can wipe out your good bacteria. All sorts of things can happen to disrupt that balance. And when that balance is disrupted, it's usually that something has happened to your good microbes. So whether it's that antibiotic, whether it's that stressful event, and they've kind of moved through the system and left that real estate open. So then that leaves an opportunity for these bad guys to then go, hey, okay, I can spread out, I can start to multiply, I can start to take up more room. So it's those bad bacteria, those yeast, that can start to take that opportunity to disrupt that balance of the good to bad. And when we see that, we see things like mood disorders. You can remember that we just said that these good guys are secreting a lot of B vitamins, a lot of those good neurotransmitters that are helping with our mood. Fatigue is a big one. An increased toxic load, because those bad guys, as they metabolize their foods, they're kicking out a lot of toxins. And when you have an increased toxic load, it's your liver who has to deal with it. So an overburdened liver, your liver does so many things in your body. It's kind of the metabolic conductor of the body. So when you have an overburdened liver that's now having to take on all these toxins from these bad bacteria, you can see other things downstream from that start to lose balance. Things like hormonal issues, things like blood sugar issues, all coming back to this overburdened liver caused by this overload of the bad bacteria and toxins. And the last point too, we now know that when we have this dysbiosis, the state where we have more of the bad bacteria, this contributes to the amyloid plaque formation and contributes towards degenerative mental health diseases as well. So, moving on towards supporting gut health. So we painted a picture here of the different aspects of the gastrointestinal tract, how they can be affected. Let's talk about now how to truly support gut health. So number one, we're going to come back to that idea of stress and digestion. So addressing stress and emotional body is the number one thing to begin your journey to heal your gut, because, if you're stressed, first of all, you're not breaking down and digesting your nutrients properly. Second of all, that stress adds to the inflammation in your gut and can contribute to leaky gut. Third, that stress can wipe out your good microbes and contribute to dysbiosis. So really, truly, the very first place to start is looking at stress in the emotional body. So the first place you can start is to incorporate some mind-body exercises daily to build that resilience. So it's not that we're always wanting to be in that rest and digest state. We just want to be able to fluidly flow between, that more of a stress state and coming back more into that rest and digest. So things like yoga, meditation, mindfulness, breath work, spending time in nature, all of these things help us transition into that rest and digest state. And when you start to do these things, they're called practices because we need to practice them so that when those times come up, when we need to shift into rest and digest, we can go, oh yeah, I have that tool. Or even the first step is, oh yeah, I know what that feels like. So if you are somebody who has a yoga practice or a meditation practice, or even if you're someone who, has that thing you go to, whether it's gardening or whether it's, taking a nice long bath, that feeling afterwards where you can go, oh, okay, your thoughts have kind of slowed, nothing seems like so much of a rush anymore. Using these practices to identify the way that feels in your body is the place to start. That way, when you sit down with your food at lunch, you can check in and go, oh, okay, I think I'm in more of this fight or flight state because my thoughts are racing, I can't settle down, I can't focus on my food right now. Okay, then you can turn to a practice. I'm going to do my 3 deep breaths and get myself into more of that rest and digest state. The other piece here too is this idea of a mindset challenge. So even negative thoughts about yourself or situations can trigger that fight or flight response as well. So this becomes the piece where you're checking in with those thought patterns and the things that are flowing through your mind on a consistent basis. We get into these thought patterns that are just our natural response to things, and that's just how it is. But being able to take a step back, kind of take the witness and watch your thoughts, see what they're saying, and tune in. So, if you are somebody who's constantly on a negative mental pattern when it comes to yourself or your performance or how you're showing up, and you're constantly beating yourself down, that's putting your body in fight or flight. That's having these downstream effects on your health. So checking in with those thoughts, maybe it's something like, oh, I didn't get as much work done today as I wanted to, I'm so lazy, I should have, showed up and I should have done things. Just listen, hear that, take the witness stance and go, okay, that's a thought, interesting thought. But you know what? I also didn't sleep well last night. And, I had low energy today and I really needed to take the day off to take care of myself so that tomorrow I can actually show up better than I would have if I had gotten into everything today. And being that support for yourself. So identifying thought patterns, reworking them where possible, just beginning to take that witness stance and seeing what's going on in your mind. The next thing is identifying and removing food triggers. So there's a lot of food sensitivities today. People have underlying food sensitivities that are quite difficult to sometimes weed out what's going on. But there's specific protocols that we do that I'll talk about here that removes, all these inflammatory foods, things that we know to be really inflammatory to the body, and supports the body with really nutritionally dense foods. And in doing a protocol like that, you're giving the gut an opportunity to heal. So you're reducing inflammation, healing that gut lining. You're modulating the immune system because now the immune system has a break. You don't have, once you have that integrity back in the gut lining, you don't have all of these undigested food particles moving into the bloodstream. So your immune system never sees those things, can take a break, can downregulate. And you're relieving digestive symptoms and all those downstream symptoms as well. This is a protocol I work with a lot with most of my clients, is doing something like an elimination protocol. I work in a healthcare clinic where I work alongside functional medicine doctors. And one of the first things they'll do is send their clients to me to go through an elimination protocol because of the immense downstream effect it can have. So whether it's mental health, whether it's chronic pain, whether it's GI symptoms, constantly cramping, bloating, fatigue, they go through this elimination protocol first, and we establish this new baseline once that gut lining is healed. And you would be amazed how many of these issues are resolved by taking this stance where we're reducing inflammatory foods, really healing the gut, really supporting the gut with these nourishing foods. I've seen some incredible transformations. Usually we do the elimination protocol for 3 weeks, and that's all it takes. So one of the other steps you can take here is, doing something like that elimination protocol, healing the gut. At the end of the elimination, we have an opportunity to then test foods. So once we heal the integrity of the gut lining, we start to reintroduce foods systemically to see if there are any effects on the body. And then that just gives you more information on how to move forward to maintain that really low inflammation in the body. Next up is bolstering your good gut bacteria. So your gut bacteria and your gut microbiome, it's constantly in flux. So it's not like something where you have good gut bacteria and you're good for the rest of all time, or you have bad bacteria and you're bad for the rest of all time. It's constantly in flux. You can kind of think of these probiotics as little travelers or visitors that are just, passing through your system, taking up shop for a little bit in your colon, hanging out there for a bit, and then moving on through. So a good way to help with that balance, to balance your gut microbiome in favor of the good gut bacteria, is to take a probiotic supplement. That just really tips the balance in favor of those good guys. And another great way to incorporate more good guys is to incorporate fermented foods into your diet regularly. So same idea, your fermented foods are these good bacteria that have basically pre-digested your food. And then when you eat them, you're getting all those good guys along with the food. So then also eating 10 to 12 servings of non-starchy vegetables daily. Your non-starchy veg are basically anything besides your potatoes, your root vegetables, and that type of thing. A couple of them pictured over here. And those 10 to 12 servings works out to be about half a plate at each meal. So half a plate at each meal, filling with these good veg. And there's a few reasons for that. First of all, they're high in vitamins and minerals, great phytonutrients, eating the rainbow, getting a wide variety of those nutrients. And also they are an excellent source of fiber. So why does fiber matter? First of all, fiber feeds those good gut bacteria. So those good guys that are colonizing our gut, what they feed upon is this fiber. We don't digest fiber, passes through our system, adds bulk to our stools, makes sure that everything is moving in one direction, and that's what our gut bacteria loves to feed on. So by feeding them, by supporting them, they're then able to secrete those good vitamins, neurotransmitters, neuroprotective metabolites, all those good things. Fiber also really helps to balance your blood sugar levels, which isn't something we've really dove into too much tonight, but essentially you can picture fiber being this net that holds on to these sugar molecules in your food. So when you're eating, you're digesting, and these little digestive enzymes are having to pick through this net of fiber, and it goes, oh, there's a sugar molecule, let's absorb that, and it has to keep digging a little more, absorbs another one. And you get this nice slow increase in blood sugar levels, and then those sugars are nice and slowly transferred into your cells, and everything is good. The contrast to that would be these refined sugars that we have. And literally what a refined sugar is a sugar where the fiber has been removed from it. So when you eat the refined sugar, There's no net holding on to those sugars. It's literally just your intestine is bathed in sugar, and your body just really quickly absorbs that into the bloodstream. And high blood sugar levels are really dangerous. Sugar in the blood is really reactive. So as soon as your body senses, oh my gosh, we have a lot of sugar in the bloodstream, your pancreas pumps out insulin and gets it into the cells. So out of the bloodstream into the cells. But the pancreas overshoots because it's in a panic. It goes, there's way too much, and it absorbs way too much of the sugar, and how you get that blood sugar crash. So that's where you get this cycle from refined sugars of these really, really high blood sugar levels, really, really low crashes. That sends you into that low blood sugar state where you might get foggy minded or shaky or hangry, as people like to call it. And that's also when you tend to be reaching for the higher sugar foods, because now your body's sending out an alert, hey, we need sugar. So it sends you into that kind of cycle. So fiber, so important for being able to balance those blood sugars. And the last point here about fiber is that it helps to move toxins out of the body. So we talked about your liver being the main place where this liver detoxification or this toxin detoxification is happening. And the liver, as it detoxifies, will dump those detoxified toxins into the colon. And it's the fiber in there that's going to hold on to those toxins and move them out of the body. So many places where fiber is important, and this is your main place where you're getting it, is from these non-starchy vegetables. So half a plate at each meal. That's my challenge to you, and lots of colors. So those are the main suggestions that I have. We'll go through some quick implementations, some things that you can incorporate if you want to do a deeper dive. But just wanted to hammer home one last time here that any approach to healing the gut must take into account both the mind and body. Because like we said, if you can be doing everything else right, you can be eating all your veggies and all your fiber and taking your probiotic, but if you're not taking the time to address the stress state of the body, then things will still be out of balance. So a couple of immediate action steps that you can literally start right now, start tomorrow, would be practicing those mindful eating techniques. So committing to yourself, okay, tomorrow I'm going to be mindful around my eating, even if tomorrow it means you're just going to notice, okay, what are my normal eating routines right now? Am I paying attention to my food? Am I eating in the car on the way to work? What are my current routines, and where can I make some adjustments? Second immediate takeaway, eat those non-starchy veg, each meal half a plate. Third one would be to reduce the intake of inflammatory foods. So these are the guys that are wreaking havoc on the gut. Main culprits being gluten, dairy, and processed foods. So really, you know, it's only the last 100 years that we've had access to these processed foods, these things that are full of preservatives and artificial flavors and artificial colors. All of these things have only really taken place in the last 100 years. And even when it comes to things like gluten and dairy, they've changed over the last few decades as well. So taking it back and remembering that we've evolved for millions of years alongside plants and alongside the environment, and we've evolved to eat a certain way. And 100 years in terms of evolution is nothing. So this is kind of an assault to our bodies where we have no idea what these preservatives are or what these different things are that we've incorporated into our food supply. And they're all causing inflammation and contributing to these downstream effects. So doing your best to prepare your foods at home, you know, being mindful around those experiences where you're eating processed foods or eating out, and playing around with the idea of testing out gluten, testing out dairy, becoming aware again, just around those situations where maybe you are having gluten, and paying attention to anything that's coming up in your body. And at the very least, yeah, just mindfully beginning to reduce and be curious. So if you want to dive a little bit deeper than those steps, you can start to work with something like a gut repair protocol using supplements. So these are the ones that I use oftentimes with clients. There's a digestive enzyme here. There's a probiotic, really full spectrum, great probiotic. And this one here is for helping to actually heal the integrity of that gut lining. So high in L-glutamine, has marshmallow root extract that really helps to soothe the inflammation, and helps to heal the gut. So I have links to these if you're interested in checking them out, or if you want to talk more about them, feel free to reach out, which leads me to my next point here would be, if you're ready to dive in, if we've kind of gone over some things here and you've checked the boxes like, oh yeah, that's me, book a discovery call with me. So I have a free 15-minute discovery call. We can chat, we can, you know, you can tell me a bit about your story, about where you're at, where you want to go with your health. And we can work out what would be the best next step for you. So like we talked about the elimination protocol, I also have such an incredible supportive team at Functional Medicine Uptown with so many functional medicine doctors, incredible kind of state-of-the-art testing, and really interesting treatments, things like IV drips to get nutrition into you. So many interesting things going on at Functional Medicine Uptown. So even if you're interested in those other things, feel free to book a 15-minute phone call and we'll see what we could get you set up with. Also, I added my email there. So it's annemarie@embodywellness.ca. If you're looking at the online booking, I think it's pretty booked up over the next week or 2 weeks. So if you're not seeing a time that works best for you, reach out, we'll get something in, we'll get you going. So just to kind of review here, as we come to a close, you know, gut health is so many things. Like we said, you know, maybe when you think of gut health, you go right to microbiome. But there's so many different things that we only even scratched the surface of tonight. So I hope that you got some good takeaway information. And if you were wanting to dive deeper, please feel free to reach out. Awesome. So here's just a couple of places where you can connect with me as well. I have an Instagram account that's at embody.wellness. My website has some really great articles, lots about fermentation there. So if the fermentation aspect is piquing your interest, there's a few really great starter fermentation recipes there. And again, there's my email as well, annemarie@embodywellness.ca. Perfect. So let me see if I can find my chat box here.
You have about